Episode 6 True Colors. When he saw Michelle arriving, the corner of Elliot's mouth slowly curled up, revealing a wicked smile. From the expression on his face, he looked almost like the devil himself. He'd been worried about how they would get out of this situation, but now he knew everything would be fine. With Michelle and 4 bodyguards there, he could finally relax. Now there's no need to call the police, Elliot said as he stood in front of his friends. Arrow was still focused on Elliot and hadn't turned to see who the new arrivals were. "Oh, really? Ready for us to teach you a lesson then, are you?" he sneered. Whenever he heard someone speaking up for Elliot, he felt his rage surge like a volcano about to erupt. His band of thugs started laughing loudly. This was their territory, and they controlled it. No one had ever dared to challenge them before. Then they saw her. As Michelle reached the group, everyone's attention turned to her. The 3 thugs leered at her, shamelessly saying exactly what was on their minds as they ogled her greedily. "Well, boss, check her out. I'm taking her home tonight." It was disgusting. Naturally, Michelle looked utterly repulsed. "Michelle, I want to teach them a lesson," Elliot said, looking at Arrow with a calm, indifferent expression. Ignoring the 3 thugs, he said, "Arrow, we're going to settle this once and for all." As soon as he had finished speaking, the bodyguards standing behind Michelle resembled a whirlwind as they knocked the thugs to the ground and rendered them useless. One of the bodyguards came directly up to Arrow. He held his ground resolutely. The security team's only objective was to carry out their orders completely and ensure the safety of their boss. Unsurprisingly, the professionally trained bodyguard was able to take Arrow to the ground easily. Arrow's thugs moaned as they rolled around on the ground in pain. "Oh, boss, we got hurt." "Yeah, boss, who is this guy? He didn't warn us he has bodyguards." "Please let us go. We won't mess with you anymore." Thoroughly defeated, the 3 men couldn't do anything but beg for mercy. It was a good thing the bodyguards knew how to control their strength. Otherwise, they might have done some permanent damage. Arrow, however, was dealt with differently. Seeming to understand Elliot's thoughts, the guard who had taken him down decided to give him some extra special treatment. Grabbing him in a hold, he started twisting his arm up behind his back. A little more pressure, and he could easily dislocate or break something. "What are you guys doing? I'm calling the police. They'll be here soon," Kate warned them. She'd already dialed 911 when the first guys were taken down. Now her boyfriend was getting thrashed, and she didn't know if Elliot was going to have her beaten up too. After all, she had said a lot of hurtful things to him. "Elliot, stop, please. No more fighting. I was wrong. I'm done," Arrow said, panting from the pain of hitting the floor and the pressure on his arm. "Elliot, listen to me. I'm a total dick and Kate is stupid, alright? I'll break up with her. If you want her, she's yours," he said desperately. Arrow had finally revealed his true colors. Kate's heart broke when she heard her boyfriend's words. She wasn't his property. He had no right to make decisions for her. "Arrow, you rat, I was wrong about you," Kate said, her heart overflowing with mixed feelings. Just yesterday, they had made love to each other, and today, he was ready to just give her away to someone else. Not only that, but he was going to give her to Elliot. As she spoke, her eyes kept flicking over to Elliot. It was at this moment, seeing Arrow clearly and regretting their farce of a relationship, that she began to hope Elliot would fall for her. "That's enough. Let them up," Elliot told the security team. Then, addressing Arrow and his thugs, he said, "You guys had better take care of yourselves from now on. I hope you won't do anything reckless." He knew the police would arrive soon, so he kept his speech short and started to walk away. Michelle fell into step beside him. "Are we really going to let them go just like that? Just now they were ready to tear us apart," Kevin said, still indignant. Niall didn't say anything. He pulled Kevin aside and gave him a look. Elliot let out a sigh of relief as the 2 of them headed off in another direction. He knew that, if it hadn't been for Michelle's appearance, that situation would have turned out very differently. "Thank you," he said to her, speaking from the bottom of his heart. He really owed her a debt of gratitude. Every time he encountered a crisis, she seemed to appear to save him. "It's nothing," she replied, as unflappable as ever. Even though she appeared to be aloof and cold with Elliot, she was actually always honest about her feelings. The 2 of them walked along quietly for a few minutes. Finally, Michelle remarked, "Your grandfather wants them to be your close security detail." "Forget it. There are a lot of things that I can take care of myself," Elliot said. Then his face revealed a hint of warmth as he asked, "Is my grandfather okay?" The sky was slowly darkening. It was almost night. "Your grandfather is fine. but there won't be any arguing with him about the bodyguards. With them around, your safety is guaranteed. If you don't want them with you overtly, then I'll have them be more discreet, she said. As long as they're not all over me and don't have a big impact on my life, I'm in, Elliot replied. At the end of the next day, Erica Johnson was leaning against a sports car out in front of the school, waiting for Elliot. This was huge. She was one of the most popular girls in school, and she didn't usually wait for anyone. But today, there she was. Eventually, Elliot slowly walked out of the gate. "Hey Elliot, over here," Erica hurriedly shouted when she saw him, waving her hand in excitement. The whole school knew her. By calling out his name so blatantly, there were no doubts that rumors would be flying around campus the next day. And right now, they had caught the attention of everyone nearby. All eyes were fixed on Elliot. Feeling the penetrating and curious gazes, he felt shy and exposed as he jogged over to Erica's car. "Hey, let's go," he said hurriedly. She jumped into the driver's seat, smiled, and hit the gas pedal. The car leapt to life and disappeared off down the street in a matter of seconds. After they left, the area around the school gate began to bustle with noise and excitement. "I didn't expect the new owner of Starlight to be so shy," Erica remarked, looking at Elliot sideways. He smiled awkwardly in response. A few minutes later, they pulled up outside Erica's family's villa. The two of them got out of the car and walked toward the entrance. The inside of the house appeared to be quite lively. When Erica opened the door, a burst of cheering rang in Elliot's ears. "Hey, look who's back!" a voice said. "Erica, come over here, Mark's here too," another person said. Everyone's eyes were focused on Erica, completely ignoring Elliot, who was standing behind her. It made sense. Since he was dressed plainly in nondescript clothes, it was easy for people to overlook him. Making her way through the crowd, Erica greeted everyone. She had lots of good friends. Elliot was very curious. He looked around and wondered to himself if he should buy a villa. When they got through to the backyard of the mansion, Jack Johnson was there. Seeing Elliot beside his daughter, a smile appeared on his face. "Well, I see Mr. Brander's made it too. As my daughter organized this party, everyone here is a friend and welcome." He reminded Erica to take care of her guest before heading off to talk to another group. As they mingled, Elliot politely said a few words here and there, but he didn't pay much attention to the people around him. He didn't know anyone there except Erica and her father, but his presence soon began to attract some attention. Him talking to her father and then going around the party with her was giving people the impression that he and Erica were in some kind of relationship. A good friend of Erica's walked over and boldly asked, "Hey Erica, who's this, your boyfriend?" She smiled and said, "Guess." "No, really, Eri, what's the story between you two?" another of her friends, Mark Goldman, asked. He was looking rather concerned, and when he noticed Elliot's cheap clothes, his dislike quickly became apparent on his face. "He's just a friend," replied Erica, although her body language seemed to suggest something different. Everyone could see she was affectionately holding Elliot's arm. Seeing this, Mark's expression became even more disapproving. Everyone in their circle knew that Mark was into Erica. He liked her a lot, and he was the protective type. Seeing her with some complete stranger was just too much. "Who the hell are you anyway? How dare you get so close to Eri?" he shouted aggressively. With a ferocious expression on his face, he took a step forward to stand toe-to-toe with Elliot. Chapter 7. Making an Entrance. People were starting to stare at the scene that was unfolding. Everyone thought that Elliot and Erica were the sweetest-looking couple. They said, "Who the hell are you?" "Erica, stay away from him," Mark said, his voice hoarse. He refused to allow anyone to get so close to Erica. She was his weakness, and the idea of anyone touching her drove him crazy. "Mark, you and I are friends, nothing more. And please don't call me Eri. You know I prefer Erica," she responded calmly. Mark, already beyond the point of anger, and now completely enraged, went on the offensive. Hot-headed and ready to explode, he rolled up his sleeves, preparing to punch Elliot. Everyone's attention had now been drawn fully to what was going on. Some people even started drifting over toward the drama and cheering Mark on. "Mark's lost it now. That guy's a goner. Looks like there's going to be a good show tonight. Who does this guy think he is? How dare he walk in here with Erica like that? Does he have a death wish or something?" "Right, just look at his clothes. That outfit he's wearing couldn't have cost more than $5. The crowd seemed to be turning against him, but Elliot didn't let it get to him. They can say whatever they like. I do things my way, he thought to himself. However, Erica felt differently. Elliot was supposed to be their VIP guest today. I can't let them treat him like this, she thought, starting to panic. As Mark was about to throw his first punch, Erica's father reappeared. Erica, this is this young man's first time here. It's your responsibility to take good care of him and your friends and make sure everyone has a good time. They're all guests here, so if you have any personal issues to deal with them somewhere else, another time, he said. And you, Mark, calm yourself down. Don't even think about starting a fight here, or I will have to teach you a lesson in place of your father. Jack was a good friend of Mark's father going back years. They were almost like brothers. With these few words, the fight that was on the brink of happening sputtered out, and Mark was forced to hold his tongue and bottle his hatred back up. As the crowd dispersed into smaller groups again, Erica led Elliot over to an area where they could sit down. Being the good hostess she was, she brought over some fruit and drinks. He was a guest after all. But it soon became clear that the people sitting nearby were talking about Elliot and laughing at him. Erica felt embarrassed and insecure. She turned to face him and said, I'm sorry. She didn't know what else to say. He was startled when he saw that her eyes had tears glistening in them. Does she think I'm angry or bothered by what happened? He wondered. Afraid that she would start crying, he hurriedly explained, It's all right, Erica. They're nothing more than a bunch of gossip. You don't have to apologize to me. Hell, I bought all of my clothes in secondhand stores. They aren't even worth $10. Elliot grinned and tugged on his cheap, faded shirt. His eyes were twinkling as he said, How could I live like royalty all day like you? In their eyes, I'm just a toad trying to win the heart of the gorgeous girl. Up to a few days ago, I probably wouldn't have dared to look at you. But now that I do, well, I think you're beautiful. Elliot's confidence had indeed changed, and he felt stronger than before. I was too scared even to chase after Kate, and Erica's 100 times more beautiful than her, he reminded himself. Now, that doesn't seem very genuine. You sound just like those smooth talkers that always go on about women, Erica said, her face flushed. She continued, Here, have an apple. No need to thank me, I'm in a good mood today. Without waiting for him to reply, she passed him the piece of fruit. He wanted to decline, but seeing that Erica didn't intend to give up, he simply accepted it. Mark, who was on the other side of the yard, watched this scene intently. His eyes were practically on fire, and he had trouble staying still, feeling as though he were sitting on pins and needles. He wished Elliot would just disappear. Everyone knew that Mark liked Erica, but she had never been into him like that. Now a pretty boy had popped up out of nowhere and was winning her over. Hey Mark, why didn't I get a few of us together to teach that guy a lesson? Suggested one of his friends. That's right, man. Even if we can't do anything here, he's fair game outside. We can do whatever we want to him after the party, commented another. It was then that Erica's laughter reached Mark's ears. Infuriated, he clenched his hands tightly and glared directly at Elliot, gritting his teeth. A while later, the party ended, and the guests began leaving one by one. Finally, only Elliot and the Johnson family were left. Being keen for his daughter to date an appropriate person, Mr. Johnson was actually interested in getting to know Elliot more. Seeing him as an obvious candidate, he found himself rather satisfied with the young man. Not only was Elliot young and massively wealthy, but he had also helped him out with his restaurant. Even better, he had also noticed that his daughter seemed to have taken a real liking to the guy. Their relationship didn't seem like one between just friends. It seemed like there was something more to it. Dad, I'll drive Elliot home. You should get some rest, Erica said to her father. Hearing that his daughter wanted to leave with Elliot, Mr. Johnson was pleased. The two of them had been hanging out all through the party, but perhaps they might be able to talk more easily in a quieter setting. With this in mind, Jack smiled at Elliot. Seeing his daughter wasn't paying attention, he said to Elliot in a low voice, I'm sure you two have lots to talk about. Go ahead and chat more on the way. Elliot was confused, but before he could reply, Erica dragged him out to the car. When she pulled up to drop him off at his place, she said sincerely, Thanks for coming, Elliot, and for helping my dad. Episode 8. Hey, big spender. No problem. It wasn't a big deal, said Elliot, grinning, much to Erica's surprise. He seemed to have spent all that money without batting an eyelid. She didn't know anyone else on that level of being super rich. After waving Erica off, Elliot headed inside. The door was slightly ajar, and it was pitch black inside. Apparently, everyone had already fallen asleep. In order not to disturb his housemates, Elliot tiptoed in, wondering, strange, why did everyone go to bed so early? Weren't we supposed to have a gaming session tonight? His knee hit the corner of a table, knocking something off onto the floor, and lights came on in the bedrooms. Elliot, I didn't expect you to be back so soon. Did you have enough fun with your lovely lady? Asked Kevin, smiling wickedly. Who knows what filth is going on in his mind, thought Elliot. Come on, you and Erica had a good time together, right? I mean, she's every guy's dream girl. Nyal teased him. I'm guessing tomorrow you'll be the big man on campus. I don't think you realize what it meant for Erica to let you get into her car in front of everyone today. Feeling tired and confused, Elliot asked, What are you talking about? We just met up with some people and hung out. What? You just hung out? Kevin mimicked, his voice clearly showing his surprise. You didn't do anything else? Hey, enough. What kind of guy do you think I am? Said Elliot, waving his hand and yawning. He sat down heavily on the sofa and took out his phone, muttering, Stop interrogating me. Let's game if you're not going back to sleep. My great sword can't wait, Kevin replied jokingly. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Elliot was still awake, while his roommates were snoring loudly. Not able to get to sleep, he browsed online for a while until he found a live broadcast to watch. He was quite familiar with this live streaming platform, as he used to watch videos there all the time. He even remembered that there was a host who never showed her face. He clicked on the platform's page, searched for Masked Girl, and clicked through to her profile to see if she was there. Sure enough, she was still streaming. She was trying out a new song. He had watched this girl's live streams before, and had to admit that her voice was really amazing. Every time he heard her, it relaxed him. However, although her voice was lovely and generated tranquility and joy in her listeners, you definitely could not say the same about some of the comments that were popping up. There were only a few people who were listening in, but one of them wasn't enjoying the show. What kind of song is that? It sounds awful. I wonder how a host like you manages to survive, said one. Hey, watch what you're saying. I love listening to her songs, responded another. Yeah, I agree. Who said that? He's just trash talking, a third listener replied. The comments descended into chaos. The person who was criticizing the host continued, while the other listeners worked together to try and shout him down. As the comments started to get more aggressive, the masked girl finally responded. She coughed lightly a few times before sighing and said, If you want to hear me sing, then listen. If you don't want to, then please leave. After she finished speaking, she went back to her music. Seeing this girl on the screen in front of him again had put a smile on Elliot's face. Suddenly, he had an urge to see what she looked like. After thinking for a moment, he started typing his own comment. Masked girl, do you want to be famous? He wrote. When she finished her next song, Masked girl replied, I'm not interested in being famous. I just want to sing here so that you can all listen to me. Elliot smiled as he clicked through to her donations link. A few seconds later, a notification popped up. Mad Mortal gave 10 spaceships. Suddenly, the chat began to ring with an incessant stream of comments. Even those who had been silent before now couldn't stop talking. This guy is loaded. Who is he? He just gave her 10 spaceships. $10,000 per spaceship. That's $100,000. Is this guy for real? The user who had been criticizing Masked Girl's singing was a supporter of other vloggers who often tuned in just to check out the competition and insult her. Seeing the huge donation come through, he immediately jumped back onto his own profile to express his disbelief. After all, whether a host was famous or not often depended on whether or not there were rich benefactors who liked them and wanted to support them. The appearance of a wealthy supporter for Masked Girl was big news. Supreme 2 has entered the room. Distant Alien has entered the room. Lots of new users were suddenly jumping on to watch Masked Girl, but these two immediately donated a spaceship each. The frenzied comments continued. Welcome, money bags! Come on in, fat cats! Damn, there are some big shots coming in. Any of you in the market for a trophy wife? Masked Girl was dumbfounded. Who is this Masked Girl? Asked Distant Alien. I don't know. I heard that someone was shelling out money here, so I came to check it out, Supreme 2 replied. It was apparent from their chat that the two new donors knew each other. Mad Mortal sent her 10 spaceships, one said. Elliot wanted to support Masked Girl, but he had another reason for sending the donation. He wanted to better understand the live streaming platform and pave the way for his future investment. Seeing that there were some other wealthy users in the chat, Elliot sent a few more gifts to the host, and then wrote, "We are all guests on this stream. Let's take advantage and listen to our host singing." Seeing his comment, Masked Girl picked up the microphone and started singing one of her most familiar songs. Her singing was just as incredible as before, intoxicating Elliot. The other two wealthy donors also seemed to find her voice pleasant to listen to, and they immediately started posting about wanting to see the person behind the mask. Seeing this, the corner of Elliot's mouth slowly curled up. This was the kind of effect he was looking for. He typed out a line of words and started to lay the groundwork for the next part of his plan. If you really want to see how she looks, it's not impossible. If you give her the most gifts, you can ask her to reveal her face, he typed. These words caused a further uproar. For 2 years, her supporters had listened to her singing and had never seen her face. Was it really the time for their beautiful and impossible dream to come true? Unfazed by the financial challenge, Supreme 2 and Distant Alien readily agreed to the idea. Elliot immediately started donating more gifts. The screen began to fill with spaceships. Dozens of them had appeared, and everyone in the chat was stunned. Damn, Mad Mortal doesn't hold back at all. He's awesome. Unbelievable. Masked Girl is definitely going to hit the big time now. Totally. If she doesn't become famous after all of this, I'll do a broadcast myself and eat dirt live. Almost everyone in the chat loved their host and was loyal to her. They were happy that she was finally going to get the recognition she deserved. Elliot had gifted $2.5 million before he stopped. He hadn't even kept track of how much he had been spending. He just needed to know that he was ahead. The other two big donors began to realize just how terrifyingly brazen Elliot was, and silently withdrew from the chat. Everyone else in the chat began to praise Elliot. To them, Mad Mortal had become Masked Girl's patron. After one small move of calculated manipulation, he had also become an instant celebrity. In no time at all, this news would spread, and soon there would be countless more followers joining. The story of his generous gifts would spread quickly. Thank you, Mad Mortal. I wish I had something positive to say, but I actually never promised to show my face to anyone. I'm sorry, Masked Girl said helplessly. Her generous donor had done so much for her, but she couldn't show him who she really was. This made her feel rather embarrassed, so she allowed him to request a song to make up for it. Don't worry, it's cool. It was just a small token of my appreciation, Elliot wrote as he looked at the screen, quite satisfied with his performance. Having money is great, he thought. If it had been the old me, I would have only been able to watch rich people doing these things. But once you have money, you really can do anything. He had lost track of time, but when he finally looked at the clock, it was already 4 a.m. The sun would be rising soon. The house was still filled with the sounds of nonstop snoring. Well, guess I'm going to buy my own place, Elliot said to himself in a low voice. Drowsiness gradually overcame him as his eyes became blurry, and he finally fell asleep. Episode 9. Don't judge a book by its cover. Elliot woke up late the next morning. When he got up, he was the only one in the house. He had overslept. Morning classes were almost over. After managing to get to some of his afternoon classes, Elliot quietly left school and headed to a residential sales office. In terms of buying a house, he naturally had to choose the best location, and the cost was no object. "Taxi!" called Elliot. A cab stopped and Elliot got in and said, "Please take me to Royal Garden Villas." The driver couldn't help but do a double take. "Excuse me, but do you live there? From what I've heard, not just anyone can go in there, you know. It's a pretty exclusive place," he said, looking at his passenger curiously. The driver was a local. Seeing Elliot's cheap clothes and hearing where he wanted to go, he wondered, what is this kid up to? Elliot casually replied, "I'm interested in buying a house. I've heard that the location isn't bad." "Whatever you say," the driver replied suspiciously. A while later, they arrived at the Royal Garden Villas residential sales office. Elliot handed the driver a $100 bill. "Keep the change," he said over his shoulder, as he started walking toward the entrance of the office. It was an extremely impressive building, elegant and grand, with every inch oozing sophistication. but when he walked inside, no one came up to greet him. Whatever, I'll just take a walk through by myself, he thought. After a couple of minutes, a sales agent spotted him, but she wasn't impressed. Seeing how casually dressed he was, she assumed he was just some arrogant guy who wanted to brag about the idea of buying an expensive house. Intending to get rid of him, she walked over to where he was standing in front of a display table. He had spotted the details for a lovely riverside villa complex and decided to give it a closer inspection. 3 of the villas had particularly caught his attention. They were all facing the river, which was a nice detail, and they had good natural light. As the agent approached him, he looked at her name tag and said, "Hello, Lauren." Sensing that she didn't want to help him, he kept his tone cool, but he really was here to buy a house, and he wasn't going to be taken for a ride by this woman. He ignored the bitter look on her face. "I want to take a look at your best riverside villas," he said to her in a voice that wasn't loud, but was perfectly audible to her, as well as the other prospective customers in the room. A few of them glanced over toward him, but then, taking in his scruffy appearance, they shook their heads with derision. Here was a young man pretending to be rich. While it might be admirable to have an ambitious goal, everyone knew that at Royal Garden Villas, a house with a view of the river was worth several $1,000,000. Even a cool $1 million was barely enough for the cheapest house available. If you wanted the best, you had to be willing to pay for it. This level of luxury wasn't something that just anyone could afford. "Good afternoon. How can I help you, Mr.?" asked Lauren questioningly, as she looked at Elliot with a forced, polite expression. "My last name is Branders," he replied, purposely avoiding her gaze. He continued, "I would like to view some of the villas." "I'm sorry, Mr. Branders, but I don't have time to run viewings at the moment. Let me find someone who is familiar with the process and can help you," Lauren said, waving toward a young sales associate across the room. When Lauren saw the newcomer arriving so enthusiastically, she immediately detested her eagerness. "So, she reckons this phony is really here to buy a house? Huh! If he actually buys one, I'll give my job to her," Lauren said to herself. "Mr. Branders, is it? I'll take you to see the villas straight away. My name is Julia White. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions," Julia said. Then she led Elliot to view the houses he had expressed interest in. She walked him out of the sales office and round to the complex located directly behind the main building. They went to look at the 3 villas, which were the ones Elliot had liked the most from the models. Coincidentally, while they were viewing those homes, Elliot spotted another riverside villa set a little further apart from the others that he particularly liked. The surroundings were completely quiet, which was exactly what he wanted in terms of location. He and Julia had a good chat, and after they had finished looking at the houses, they went back to the sales office. "Mr. Branders, have you got one of the houses in mind? I saw that you were rather taken with number 103 in Area A," Julia said in a gentle and pleasant voice, flashing her professional smile. Well, yes, I do like it. In fact, why don't I take that one? I think I'm ready to take care of the paperwork and buy it right now," he responded immediately. Julia was shocked. The price of that place isn't exactly peanuts, she thought to herself. And this guy doesn't look rich at all. He can't be serious, right? When she went into the back office to start finding the relevant paperwork, Julia's colleagues were beyond curious and started asking about the house that Elliot had his eye on. When they heard which one it was, all their expressions showed contempt. A poor idiot wanting to buy a villa worth $10 million was simply wishful thinking. Everyone's thoughts were the same. Let's see where he comes up with that kind of money to buy the house. He can't just magic it out of thin air. They waited eagerly to see Elliot make a complete fool of himself. Episode 10. Learning the Hard Way. Julia had always been very cordial on the job, showing the utmost professionalism as a salesperson. As she didn't know if Elliot had the money to buy this villa, she wasn't sure if he was messing with her. However, she treated every customer equally and with respect. Even if they didn't want to purchase in the end, she always maintained her patience. But before she got back to him, Lauren walked up to Elliot and sneered. "Are you seriously thinking of buying that villa?" "Of course," Elliot said, nodding his head forcefully. He didn't appear to be joking at all. "It costs over $10 million, she replied curtly. "I know," he said. "Do you want to take out a mortgage, or will it be full payment up front?" she asked sarcastically. crossing her arms across her chest with a fake smile on her face. "I will pay in full," Elliot responded calmly. She burst into laughter, and the other salespeople could not help but smile to themselves as well. Regaining her composure, Lauren pretended to be polite as she extended her right hand to Elliot and said, "Well, let us take your payment then." She then retreated to the side and stood with a few of her colleagues to watch the rest of the show. She wanted to see how this pretentious brat's day would end. "I'll pay by card," Elliot said, and took out his credit card from his pocket. Handing it to Julia, he said to her, "If you could do the honors." "Yes, sir," Julia replied, and took the card from his hand. She was very nervous, wondering if this was all going to turn out to be some elaborate trick. She brought up the details of the house and entered the card details for payment. Lauren and the sales staff all strained their necks to look. They couldn't wait to see what they were sure was going to happen. After a brief authorization process, the system notified her that the payment was successful and printed out the transaction receipt. Lauren and the other sales staff were all struck speechless. None of them were laughing now. They stared at Elliot as though they were looking at a freak, with exaggerated expressions of confusion fixed on their faces. Now, they no longer saw the kid in front of them as a pathetic fraud, but as an immensely wealthy man. Julia was also very surprised, but in a good way. She was pleased that everything had worked out okay. As a junior salesperson, she had never accepted a payment this large before. It was her first time dealing with this level of transaction. The commission alone was comparable to several months of her salary. "Mr. Branders, the payment has been charged successfully. Here is your card back," she said as she placed the card carefully back into his hands. Her arms were trembling with excitement. "Great," he replied, and put the card away. With a smile on his face, he instructed her, "Let's get right to the paperwork. The sooner we get this done, the better." Elliot felt good about this girl in front of him, unlike the other salespeople who had treated him like trash. He was pleased that she was the one to earn a commission for the sale. "All right, I'll get the paperwork sorted for you right away," Julia said, feeling so happy that she couldn't stop smiling as she started preparing the papers. Obviously, the other salespeople were extremely envious of Julia. She had sealed this huge deal without breaking a sweat. Lauren was particularly jealous, as she was the one who had pushed this large deal onto Julia. Just thinking about it filled her with regret and heartache. If she had known Elliot was so rich, she would have treated him differently. After an initial moment of surprise, some of the salespeople began to surround him, switching from their previous ridicule of Elliot to flattery. At this point, they knew he was genuinely rich, and even if he didn't appear to hold any grudges, they didn't even consider offending him now. When the rest of the paperwork was all finished up, the sales staff sent Elliot off with a warm goodbye, and he left the office with his certificate of title. He was now officially a homeowner. Now that he had bought the house, he called Michelle and arranged for her to buy furniture to fill it. There was no doubt that she had been well chosen by his grandfather. She had everything completed efficiently and properly by the next morning. Elliot moved into his new house straight away. Michelle showed him everything she had prepared. Looking at the huge rooms filled with brand new furniture, he felt extremely satisfied. After checking every room, he finally stopped in the study. Seeing the shelves filled with books on economics, he furrowed his brows and asked, "Why are there so many books in the study?" "This was your grandfather's request. After all, you will have to manage billions of dollars in assets in the future, and to do this, you'll need professional knowledge of the industry," Michelle explained to him calmly. But he tried to interject, but Michelle cut him off. "Your grandfather also said that he wants me to supervise your studies." "That won't be necessary," Elliot replied, scratching his head and looking at her. He felt a slight headache coming on, but he continued, "With a gorgeous lady like you staying here, how will I be able to focus and study? You should go. I'll figure it out by myself." "All right," Michelle said, and feeling embarrassed, gave a small smile before turning around and walking out. Elliot slumped in a chair and let out a long breath. It seemed inheriting billions wasn't going to be the cakewalk he had thought it would be. However, he soon pulled himself together and started reading one of the books seriously. He paused for a minute to reflect. "I used to be so poor. I have to think of ways to improve myself and get stronger. I can't let Grandpa down." After reading a part of the book, he was once again distracted by thoughts about the live stream host, Masked Girl. The platform that she was on was called Starstorm TV, and it was very small. There were few well-known hosts, but the platform itself was very well made. While he was reading, he had an idea. If he could invest a little money in a live broadcasting platform like this one, he might be able to earn a nice chunk of change. With his mind occupied with thoughts of what he could do with the streaming platform, Elliot didn't get to sleep until very late that night. The following day, he woke up and went to school. He ran into Arrow and Kate at the entrance to the classroom for his first lecture of the day. There were some bruises on Arrow's face from his recent run-in with Elliot's bodyguards. When he saw Elliot, his neck retracted, and his eyes filled with fear. Kate was just as frightened as Arrow, and she looked like she wanted to run away. The two of them had been shocked by the incident with the security team. Even now, without the guards there, they still felt a lingering fear. Elliot didn't say anything, just glanced at them both before walking into the classroom. "Hi," Kate tried to speak, the corner of her mouth quivering. She watched Elliot's back as he walked further and further away. In the end, she didn't say what she had wanted to say. Only now did she understand that Elliot, who had once chased after her, was gone forever. Now that he was no longer interested in her, she couldn't do anything about it. As soon as Elliot entered the classroom, he noticed that everyone was talking about the relationship between him and Erica. Most of them were filled with envy. As everyone gossiped, Miss Davison suddenly appeared, and all of the students immediately went silent. She was the strictest teacher in the entire faculty, and her students secretly considered her to be a true she-devil. No one dared to misbehave during her lessons. But while Miss Davison was tough, she was also very pretty. That day, she was wearing a well-fitted, flattering dress, and her beauty was beyond description.